All right, welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing part 4 of the Exporter series. This is the one part we want to finalize things about landed cost. And before we get into market survey, kind of the second part of a discussion that we have with a company, we want to look at regional focus. We've already kind of discussed the key influencer facts. We've looked at the trade data. We've planned landed costs. We know what our landed costs are going to be, but we really wanted to spend a little bit of time for new exporters. This is people that are new to exporting or have never exported before. We want to talk a little bit about regional focus. And with the term regional focus, we also want to refer to regional partners. If you're going to be thinking strategically about your market focus for your company, and you really haven't looked at certain markets, you need to kind of think about the region as a whole of where you're going to export to, and think about what we talk about as a master distributor for a region or a regional distributor. And we're going to explain that here in just a second. So we know our landed costs from the last video. We figured out, like, we're talking about the beer category right now. What we're talking about with landed cost, we want to find markets that are great for U.S. exporters in general, and we'll use the U.S. exporter as the qualifier for this, but we want to think about regional landed costs. So markets, let's say and this is Google Maps, and I just pulled up a map real quick, markets in South America. If you are based in the U.S., and here's the ping for Florida, where we're based right now today, because we're working with a Florida business. But if you are in the United States and you're trying to reach Latin America or even South America, you want to look at a regional focus. So let's hyper look at the South American to the Latin American region and see what works for you as a company. Now, most of the markets in Latin America have a free trade agreement with the U.S. And this part about the free trade agreements is just for U.S. companies. For everybody else overseas, look up your free trade agreements and know where you are. But Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, and the DR are all part of the CAFTA DR region for free trade with the United States. Very close to the United States, that's great. You want to pick a market, if you're just starting out, that kind of sits in the middle of a region in order to distribute to this market effectively. The only hard part about this is the Dominican Republic is so far away from these other Central American markets that it becomes almost a market in and of itself. And in fact, if you zoom in, the DR for the U.S. actually becomes a trading hub for all these island nations. So if you're really seeing island traffic, if you're exporting a product that has something in the Dominica or St. Lucia, Barbados, Grenada, all the way around the Horn in the Caribbean, the DR is a good starting point for you as a company. So the DR kind of sits on its own. It's a great starting point, but we also want to think about markets like Central America. We break the the Western Hemisphere down into 3 different markets. We use the Latin American, LATAM, and then the South American market. So focusing on the Latin American markets, where we are right now, you want to choose a market that kind of sits in between both markets and make that a central point of your distribution operations. So for instance, the beer distributors, the biggest beer distributor or the biggest beer consuming countries were Costa Rica and Panama. Looking at how to get to the rest of these markets, choose a master distributor in the region who can be your distributor and say, by the way, would you take extra product for me and distribute it to where I need it to go in the rest of the market? Sometimes they're going to say yes, sometimes they might say no, but it might be good to find a fulfillment house in Panama or in Costa Rica that can fulfill all of your island nations right here. So you're sending to one shot down to here as a container load, and then they're going to do some fulfillment down here in the market. One of the strategies we talk about in the Pro Exporter series that we'll bring up is regional distributorship. Having a distributor in one country or a fulfillment house in one country to service all these markets. Shipping every month to these different markets is a very, very difficult task. So finding a market like a San Jose fulfillment house or Panama in the Cologne region, if we zoom all the way in, the Cologne region right through the Panama Canal, this region right here is a very good free trade area. So you can bring some product in here and then not pay duties on it if it goes to somewhere else, or if you want to bring it in here. There's a lot of free trade zone acquisition here, and there's also an airport there. So you're very, very close to the free trade zone in Cologne. We actually recommend Cologne as a great starting point for a company that is trying to find a distributorship in these markets, but also reach the Panamanian market, the Costa Rican, the Nicaraguan market, etc. So looking at a regional distributorship, you want to find a fulfillment house that probably can do some fulfillment for you on a regional level, palletized level if you can, and then distribute to these other markets. It's a lot easier to send one full container load to a market and let it sit in a warehouse for just a few weeks or months and pay the palletized fees in those markets than having to ship constantly to these different markets. So one of the things we talk about when we talk about this in the Pro Exporter series is thinking about a country like Panama or a country like Costa Rica to start your Latin American operations. Now for South America, it's very, very tricky and very different. It's a monumental task distributing to all of these countries and all of these markets at the same time. What we really focus on is getting your product into a more South American market or a Latin American market and then going from there. We had some great contacts in Santiago, Chile that have some great interest in Valparaiso. There's a direct route from the U.S. all the way into Chile, and you can get into Argentina and Uruguay and Paraguay. Brazil is a completely different story and a completely different animal. We're seeing some of the best efforts for companies if they want to get into Recife or they want to go up to Costa Fortaleza. There's some good opportunities there. But looking at a regional distributorship for your company in a market is critical to making the jump into a region. So instead of just trying to export 15 container loads all the time to all these different markets, and they're not even full containers, they might be LCLs or one pallet, find a regional fulfillment house that can then do fulfillment for you, that speaks English by the way, that can fulfill your needs. We've seen some great opportunities in the Cologne region in Panama. There's also some other good opportunities if you can get into San Jose or some of the island cities like Punta Arenas. We're actually going to be in Costa Rica in about a month doing some business down there for a client and looking into some of these things, so we'll let you know how these markets are. But really think about this. There's some really good opportunities in this area to do some distributorship, but Cologne is definitely on the top of the list. So when you're looking at the world as a region, focus on a region and find fulfillment in the region, and then start working on your distributorship model there. Get your biggest market first, so get your fulfillment and then your distributor, and then you can start really building your market. Again, this is kind of step one of us for our company, working into step two, and the next thing we're going to talk about is our survey of the market with our channel partners. So that'll be the next video we put out in the Pro Exporter series.